You know who I am.
You weird son of a bitch.
Okay. Wow.
Go ahead.
Wow, that was fun. Okay. All right. So Mr. Derek Sitter, welcome. Thank you for meeting with me.
Of
Um
course. My
yeah,
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
okay. So as you can see, I wanted to start out with Bug Tussle, because that's what's kind of happening right now. I mean, you just got back, you're in Oregon again, you're at home in Oregon, but you were in Atlanta recently.
Yep.
You don't mind, let's dive right into what's going on with Bug Tussle. It's obviously winning an incredible amount of awards. And what the latest award, best dark comedy at well, I'm gonna give you the floor. Tell me all about it. So
Well, it was at Atlanta After Dark Film Festival.
okay.
Um, and it's part of the film festival circuit that I think they have about 32 festivals across the country. And they were also the Oregon Short Film Festival. So it's not necessarily the same people, but they are the same organization. And we're always in Atlanta. We were at Southern Shorts Awards, which was also in Atlanta. I've been there before at live events. This past year was a virtual event. And I think we wrapped up 3 or 4 awards there at the Southern Shorts, and then went to Atlanta After Dark with no real expectations. I just love traveling, going to film festivals.
Wow.
And I was spending a week checking out Atlanta, checking out the market, checking out even home prices, things about maybe a possibility of moving there, and went to the festival that day. And yep, they called Buck Tussle. And the funny thing, and this goes along with pretty much my entire career, is a lot of the times you don't submit your categories. You just submit, and
Okay.
usually the category is short film. Sometimes more genre specific film festivals, they'll ask you, what category are you submitting in? But it's interesting that regionalisms exist so much, and particularly in the States, that you could watch Buck Tussle in Texas, which we were there. Um, and it was a dark, no, it was a comedy in Texas. In Atlanta, it was a dark comedy, and in Oregon, it was a dark drama. So the response, the reaction of Buck Tussle, and it was similar with Tutu Grande as well, is all over the map. And I actually love that, because it's been kind of a constant within my work in my career, is particularly in the film industry, and not so much in the theater, but in the film industry, is people need stereotypes, people need prototypes, they need labels, so they know where to place things. I never fit into any of them. Like, I was just an actor from Oklahoma. It was a little wild, a little crazy. Find out a little later, he's a little bipolar. But the energy of the the work, the influences of the work, I've never genrefied anything in my life. You just trust a vision
Yeah.
and you execute it. And yeah, I think I probably am a little aware that some of my stuff's a little outrageous. Sometimes as much as I try to avoid sentimentality, I'd like to think always has some heart and some passion behind it rather than wallowing in sentimentality. But with Bug Tussle, the responses are all over the map.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me how different, because some people literally love Bug Tussle and others absolutely hate it. I'm like, okay.
But you mentioned that you try to avoid sentimentality. What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a lot of, and particularly with the influences, particularly the writing influences, there's a lot of, cinema and theater, and I would even say novelists that really dive into sentimentality and try to tug on the heartstrings. And that goes with, not only maybe the performances, but, the very melancholy sound design, and they're really just kind of sucking you in, looking for a tearjerker type moments. Some are just genuinely heartfelt and you end up crying. But there are a lot of filmmakers and playwrights and directors that really go after that. They want to be a little heavy-handed at tugging on the heartstrings. Well, there's some moments in pretty much all my work where there's a potential for that. And I so hate it that I want you to empathize. I want you to be invested into the characters. But probably most of the influences I have towards the writing portion are playwrights. And some of my favorite playwrights are, Sam Shepard, of course, David Mamet, Martin McDonagh, Edward Albee, Harold Pinter. They're the perfect examples of avoiding sentimentality, and how they do that. And it's not necessarily a story device. I just think organically they understand that, oh, I know this is probably a moving moment that they've written that's probably quite heartfelt, but right at the moment where it may seem to be a tad heavy-handed, they'll insert some comedy or something random or something irreverent that just takes you out of that. Like, I've accomplished what I've done. Now we're going to move on. Okay. Where other times I see directors just wallow, and let's just say it's a funeral, and everybody's very moved, and you'll hear the music, and you'll see all the, it's just, and it's so manipulative, and it's just so, and I shut off as a viewer. I just shut off. I'm like, just take me out of this. But like McDonagh is brilliant at it, particularly in Banshees of Inisherin, but his plays like Pillowman and Beauty Queen of Lanaine, and almost all of his work, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, he knows when things are, and Sam Shepard was great at it too. They know when things are potentially moving, but they're not going to wallow in the sentimentality of the circumstance. And it's important, I think, to avoid that. Yeah. And it's kind of like Shepard said. Shepard had opportunity in all of his work where things could have been written and ending to where it's quite moving and it's quite tidy at the end. But he never did that, because he always says he prefers beginnings and new beginnings. And that's how I always love to, like, when I start thinking about wrapping up a film or a story, even if I'm directing a play, I'm going to wrap this up as a new beginning, perhaps a little hope, along with some tragedy or some comedy, whatever it is. And like True West is a perfect example. It could have been. It's so ambiguous how he ends the play with the two brothers just staring at one another, not knowing exactly what their future is. And it's ideal. And if you look at McDonough, it's if you've seen Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, the whole objective from Frances McDormand was to catch her daughter's killer. But when you get to the ending, and no spoilers, but if you get to the ending, she never accomplished that goal whatsoever, even though that ended up being the plot of the film. But what they did accomplish in the ending, to me, was much more profound. And same thing with Banshees of Inisherin. It was much more profound ending and ambiguous, but more importantly, I think, a new beginning. And I think that's why I like to think of it as absurdity, particularly from theater of the absurd. That when you look at like work of Edward Albee, he does the same thing. And if you look at the work of Steven Spielberg, it's profoundly different because he's always tugging at your heartstrings.
Oh.
And I find it manipulative. I think they know exactly what they're doing. They're master craftsmen. They just tell stories, wrap them up in tidy little packages, and tug on your little heartstrings to make sure you have a happy little ending. And that work just doesn't interest me. So
Yeah, they kind of get you with the music. They really do. But
yeah, and there are always the little children involved and the teary-eyed, and it's just it's fine. If that, it's just not my thing. It's the new beginning thing that I love so much. And Shepard he was quoted saying that in an interview, and and in fact, it's actually in the dialogue of True West,
I haven't read.
because one of them's a writer,
Okay.
and he says, oh, they're both very intoxicated, I think, in the third act, and the writer says, "Oh, I can't remember which one says what, but one says I love beginnings because I think the Morning Sun was coming out, and the other one says I always preferred endings myself, or something like that, or but that was a through line through all of his work, that along with his father, of course.
And yours too. I mean, Bug Tussle, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the ending is totally a new beginning. You have no idea what's going to happen with Crow. You just don't. You're like, okay, anything could happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's an ending for sure, but it's not tidy. Where we know exactly what happened, and here's the end. Thank you for watching. It's you don't. I think all great stories, and I'm not saying my stories are great, but I think all great stories leave, and I'm not saying leaving open for a sequel. I'm saying they leave it open for the viewer or the reader to let that journey continue with their own experiences and references. And I think it's probably different for everybody who watches it. I've been with people who've asked me what happened at the end, and I just always said, "What do you think?" I mean, that's the ending. What do you think? And I remember one guy said something to me. Said, "Well, he heard the silent signal." I'm like, certainly a possibility. And I was even proud somebody picked that up because that was very specific dialogue. But yeah, it is Crow's story one, and you had to have Crow's through line from point A to point B, and what happens at the end is Crow's story.
Yeah.
And you have, when you write anything, it's character and conflict. And if you look at Crow, he's in a good amount of conflict and obstacles, and Coy being the biggest one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in storytelling, and fundamentally, it's pretty simple. But within the story, I'd hoped to reveal a great deal about who these people were. And then when you start thinking about an ending, sometimes I have an ending before I have a beginning. And I never really know. Sometimes I look back at endings when I've written something or directed something, look back on it, and I have no idea where it came from. To this day, I probably don't know why I wrote that, but I know it wasn't in the original.
Oh, okay. The original being the Coy and Crayon.
Well, this story's been around for a long time in my head. I think the first time I was doing a showcase in Los Angeles, and it was about six of us. Everybody was doing a one man, 6-7 minute performance, and I preferred to do a scene, so I wrote this short 5-minute scene called Poncho and Lefty. And it was same circumstance, trapped in this barn. And then that was it with that. But many years later, we were doing another one of those 72-hour film challenges. And I'm like, oh, I have a script. And so we went, found a location, and I cast one of my students. And I think we did that in 2 shots. And that was Coyote No Crow. Then it stayed in my computer forever. But I'd written a full-length feature of Poncho and Lefty. And of course, the Crow character was Poncho. He was Hispanic. And then eventually it turned into this 20-minute short, which is just the ending. I tried to put as much history and backstory of each character in the dialogue and in the performances as I could in the 20 minutes, but there's still a whole lot you don't know how they got in this situation to start with. And that's Amp and Darlene, and there's the gambling, the cockfights. I mean, there's a lot that led them up to this point. That there's a lot of story there.
Yeah.
So it still may end up being a feature.
Well, that would be cool. When are people going to be able to? I mean, is it going to stream at some point?
Yeah.
Okay.
The festivals, Tutu Grande was in festivals forever, and I think it's still in festivals. Because I get hit up and people asking me, directors ask me, hey, can you please submit Tutu Grande? And they give me a waiver code, and I'll say, sure. In fact, we were just in one in Berlin. And, but it's usually a couple of years.
Okay.
in the festival circuit, depending on how successful it is. I think Buck Tussle's too long for a lot of festivals. 20 minutes is really pushing it. Now, for short film festivals, 20 minutes is more acceptable. I judge film festivals, so when I see a 20-minute short, I go, okay, it's gonna be good. Because it's 20 minutes. There's a 5-minute shorts. There are micro shorts. There are mid-length shorts. 20 minutes is a long short. 30 minutes is a really long short. But if you're submitting to film festivals, what's interesting, especially some of the bigger ones, because I understand, I've been going to festivals since the 90s, and the one thing that I've noticed, that particularly with short films, if you're going into some of the bigger festivals, sometimes a short will begin a block of right before a feature. So a 5 to 10 minute short fits in there perfectly to screen prior to a feature. Because, they get so many submissions, they only have so much time throughout the festival to screen these films. And some of these festivals screen your film 3 or 4 times throughout the weekend. So you're traveling to different theaters, watching your film and doing the Q&A. A 20-minute short is hard to fit because it's a lot of time, because some festivals only have so much time.
Right.
So they may not even watch it. They may see the 20 minutes and go, yeah, no, not enough time. And so you have to be really, really aware, particularly in the circuit. But to answer your question, is when I start getting more selections or more rejections, I'll get more of an idea of how long Buck Tussle will be in the circuit before it goes public, because it's usually required that it is not public. And they love premieres. They love premieres in their own city. They love premieres in their own state, perhaps. And if you're public anywhere, YouTube, Vimeo, Amazon, Netflix, wherever, you're immediately declined because you're public. So you just give it time and wait.
So it could be a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of festivals we're waiting, because some festivals, may have 2 a year. There are some that are actually monthly. There are some that are quarterly. So the ones that are like once a year, they have one festival, 4 days a year, a Thursday through a Sunday. So you're still waiting on the selection for the 2023 festival. And the notification date may not be till June, may not be till October. So I don't know. So I can't, until I get the rejection or selection, I can't go public, because it's an immediate rejection as soon as they find out you're public.
Okay. So I think a great through line for everything is with your films, with all of them, I think the biggest through line that I can see is that you're writing about people that are, they're obviously at the bottom. Crow and Coyote are certainly there's no way out for them. I mean, maybe with Crow at the end with again, I don't want to do the spoil it, but you don't kind of know what he's going to do at that point. But I don't know. For me, I kind of assume that he's going to continue. I don't know that he's going to be able to get out of trouble. What is it, about
Broken people.
Yeah, broken people. There you go. That's it. That's it. Broken.
Yeah. I mean, that's not only as an actor, director and writer.
Yeah.
That's always what I'm attracted to. I find them the most interesting people. Even when I was in college, those were the characters I wanted. I wanted to dive into these broken human beings. And I think I don't necessarily think of theme when I'm writing or directing. I certainly am aware that it's there, but story's king. I try to tell the story. But for me, and my approach is, because I'm an actor and classically trained as an actor, I'm always approaching it through a character study. And for me, probably because where I grew up, or I should say where I was born, in Oklahoma, and the people that I was surrounded by in small town Oklahoma. Then eventually, regardless of my experiences, eventually when I became aware that there was something wrong with me, and other people have always known there was a little something off, and there were words like edgy and crazy, and my nickname at LSU was Crazy D. That's what everybody called me. And I took that with pride. I was like, yeah, I did right. And I still, at this point, I still do. People, that term crazy in a good way, whatever that bullshit means. But to me, and it will always be a through line, and there's that, everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And I always like to think of it like, if you read a headline online on some news site of what occurred in Bug Tussle, it would tell you zero about who these people were. They're only going to mention the crime.
Oh, yeah.
And the crimes committed. They're never going to explain their story. I'm always interested in people and I still see it every day, that you could be walking down the street and you see the guy who clearly got something going on. He may be talking to himself. He may be, twitching. There's something, and people will make a point to avoid them. Whereas I think I'm the guy that's going to go up and say, "Hey, man, how are you?
Yeah.
How can I help you? What's going on today?" Because I understand them, and I want to know how I can help. And I've always been that way since I was a kid.